Welcome to our deep dive into the story of Laika. You're interested in podcast history's mixed bag, right? And you want to explore Laika's journey.
Yeah, Laika, first living being to orbit Earth.
It's such a fascinating story. A really complex event, too. It really sums up the space race, I think. All that ambition, the anxieties of the time.
Definitely.
We're going to uncover some surprising things, things that go beyond what we typically hear about Laika.
I think people will be surprised by some of this.
Okay, so let's set the stage first. 1957, the Cold War, right, at its peak.
Yeah.
The Soviet Union launches Sputnik 1.
The first artificial satellite.
Shocks the entire world.
Yeah, it really did.
Then, just 1 month later, Sputnik 2.
With Laika on board.
I mean, talk about a power move. It just showed everyone what they were capable of.
It was a statement.
It's amazing how quickly they were able to put Sputnik 2 together.
Yeah, just 1 month after Sputnik 1. Incredible.
So let's talk about Laika. Was she like a purpose-bred space dog?
No, actually.
She wasn't. Nope. She was a stray.
Really?
Picked up right off the streets of Moscow. They wanted resilient dogs.
Oh, I see.
Dogs who could handle harsh conditions, strays. They're already used to fending for themselves.
Right. Survival instincts.
Exactly.
So from the streets of Moscow straight into space.
Amazing, isn't it?
I can't even imagine. The training must have been super intense, though, right?
Oh, absolutely. Rigorous program. Noise, vibrations.
Simulating the launch?
Yes. Getting her used to that. Then confinement, of course.
Yeah.
Tiny capsule.
Claustrophobia.
And even the lack of gravity, trying to prepare her for all of that.
The unknown.
For the unknown.
And this was a one-way mission, right?
Yes.
We all know that Laika didn't survive. But for decades, the Soviets claimed she lived for a whole week in orbit.
Propaganda. Part of the Cold War.
When did the truth finally come out?
Not until 2002.
Wow, that late.
Yeah. They declassified some documents, interviewed the scientists who were involved. We finally got the real story.
And what was the real story? Laika actually died just a few hours after launch.
Oh, wow.
Overheating. The thermal control system, it malfunctioned.
In the capsule?
Yeah, in the capsule. Temperatures just soared. Unbearable.
Oh, that's just awful. All that training, the terror of the launch, and then to die because of something like a faulty temperature control. It just makes you realize, how risky those early space flights really were.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder.
And it raises all these questions about the ethics of it all. Was it really necessary, sacrificing Laika for science, especially during the Cold War?
It's a difficult question.
It really is. One of the biologists who trained Laika, Dilja Kotoskaja, later said something that always stuck with me. She said, "I asked her forgiveness, petted her one last time, and cried."
That's powerful.
I know, right? You could just feel the emotion in those words, the complexity of it all. I mean, it's not just about some big scientific achievement. It's about the moral dilemmas, personal sacrifices, the consequences of decisions made in that time, all that competition, scientific ambition.
Absolutely. It's so much more than just a technological achievement. It's a very human story.
Yeah, definitely. A very human story. And her story, it really is a mixed bag. Speaking of which, maybe we should talk more about the science. What did we actually learn from Laika's flight? Even though it ended so tragically, what did her journey teach us?
Well, even though it ended tragically, Laika's flight did give us invaluable data about the effects of spaceflight on living organisms.
You're saying her sacrifice, as awful as it wasn't all for nothing.
Exactly. You have to remember, this was so early in the space age, we barely knew anything about how living beings would react to weightlessness, prolonged radiation, the stresses of launch, of being in orbit.
Right, it was all so new.
Brand new. And Laika's vital signs, they were transmitted back to Earth.
Oh, so they were monitoring her during the flight.
Yes. And that gave scientists their first real look into these physiological effects.
I see. So what did they learn, specifically, from her journey?
Well, one of the key things was the impact of weightlessness on cardiovascular function.
The heart, you mean?
Yes. They observed changes in her heart rate, her blood pressure, even the way her blood flowed through her body. It was all different in space.
Wow.
And that information, it was crucial for developing life support systems, ones that could actually keep future space travelers healthy.
That's amazing. I mean, it's kind of hard to believe that something as tragic as Laika's death could actually lead to these breakthroughs. It just shows you, doesn't it, that exploration, it's this mix of, well, triumph and tragedy.
Yeah, it's a real mixed bag.
Exactly.
Another really important area was radiation exposure. Back then, we didn't really understand the dangers of cosmic rays, solar flares.
Right.
Laika's journey, it helped scientists to measure those risks, and then they could start to develop shielding to protect astronauts in the future.
So even though her mission was short, it made space travel safer for everyone who came after.
Yes, exactly. It laid the groundwork.
So what happened after Laika? Did the Soviets keep sending dogs up?
They did.
They did.
Yeah, and this time with more success.
Thank goodness.
Just a few months later, they launched Belka and Strelka, two more canine cosmonauts.
Two more dogs.
And they returned to Earth, safe and sound.
Oh, wow. Can you imagine the relief when those dogs landed safely?
Oh, it was a huge victory for the Soviet space program and a big morale boost for the whole country, really. Belka and Strelka, they became global celebrities.
I bet. They were proof that, well, that space travel was possible and that you could come back alive.
Exactly. And that paved the way for Yuri Gagarin to become the first human in space. Just a year later.
It's incredible to think about a stray dog from the streets of Moscow playing such a vital role in human history.
Like his legacy, it's complicated, isn't it? Full of sorrow, but also incredible scientific progress.
It really is. It makes you think about the ethics of it all.
Yeah, it forces us to look back, not just with admiration, but with a critical eye. What were the ethical implications?
It's a question we still ask today, right?
Yeah.
As we push further into space, how do we balance the thirst for knowledge with our responsibility to protect life? What do you think?
It really is a tough question. No easy answers. You see the advancements, all the amazing things we've accomplished in space, but then you think about what Laika went through and the suffering, and it makes you question things. It really does. It's that classic, what is it? History's mixed bag. Triumph and tragedy all mixed together. Laika's story, it makes us look back not just at the achievements, but also at the choices that were made,
Yeah.
the ethical side of things.
That's what makes history so interesting. It's not just about the facts. It's about, I don't know, wrestling with these big issues, trying to see things from a different perspective, a different time.
Exactly. And Laika's story, it stays with you because it's really about how we treat other living beings. In our search for knowledge, where do we draw the line? What are the limits?
It feels like Laika's story, it was a turning point, not just for space exploration, but for how we think about animals in research.
I think that's right. The public, they were outraged when they found out what really happened to Laika. And then the later missions, with the dogs coming back safely. I think that all helped to change things, made people realize we needed to be more humane, more ethical in our research.
So for you listening out there, big fan of history's mixed bag, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about Laika, her story? It's a perfect example of how history is never simple. It's not black and white. It's a mix of everything. Amazing achievements, but also sacrifices, tough choices. And we're still dealing with those same questions today, aren't we?
We are. Laika's journey, it wasn't just about science. It was a moment in time that really captured the world's attention, made us think about our place in the universe, the price of progress, what we owe to other living creatures. Her story reminds us that exploration, whether it's in space or somewhere else, it needs to be done thoughtfully, with compassion, and we need to learn from our past, from the good and the bad.
What a powerful thought to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the story of Laika, a story that really does represent everything history's mixed bag is about.